Hi everyone and welcome to our webinar. My name is Zina. I'm a digital marketing manager at APSCo and I'm pleased to welcome you to another great webinar. Today I'm joined by James Chaplin, CEO of Vacancysoft, on an insightful session on using vacancy data to improve your key account management and profitability. I'll hand you over to our expert speaker today, but if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to use the chat box and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions throughout the webinars or throughout the webinar or at the end. Hi James and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming on board to take part in this webinar. So just for those of you who aren't aware of us, we've been going for about 11 years and we're established in 2006. And what we do is we publish data for the recruitment industry. So what that means is that we are monitoring the company websites themselves, so not job boards, but the companies, and we're identifying the jobs as they're posted, and then we're quality controlling all of the content so we can create high-grade data for you. All our clients get daily emails, and that then informs them of what the latest jobs are that are relevant for them, and they obviously also have access to our database. And what all of that means is that we can actually aggregate the data, and through that we can provide insight. So my background before this was that I actually started off as an economics grad. So a big part of economics obviously is working with data to forecast economic trends and at a micro level, analysing what's happening in unique aspects of the economy to see if that has potential ramifications. We set up this business and then we actually moved our operations to Warsaw. So we have a team there. So yeah, basically in terms of the job market, this is something that a lot of people are not aware of. Actually, there are only 40,000 companies in the UK which are either medium to large. And those companies account for 2/3 of all UK employment. And that's a statistic. Everyone thinks there are millions of companies in the UK, but actually, if we're looking at where recruitment companies make their money, they make their money from a very, very small company list. There are about 1,200 global multinationals, which will have global headcounts of over 5,000. And so what that means is that when you're looking at your business and how you make money, if you're making less than 2/3 of your billings from your medium to large clients, you're actually missing a trick. And you're maybe working too hard to make money, when in fact if you reposition yourself, you could be making money easier from a fewer number of clients, which means less hassle around. So anyway, so the chart on the right is government statistics. So I think it's always quite useful to do this. But to give you context with our data, what we do as a start point is we make sure that we monitor all of the medium to large companies in the UK. And that's the start point of our data. Obviously, there are millions of small companies. We make best efforts with those, but the medium to large company coverage, I believe, is what's critical for the recruiters. So if a company link breaks, we rebuild it, and we make sure we pick up every job that's relevant. As part of that, we also identify when jobs are being republished or reposted, and we strip out the duplicates. So that it's only a clean set of data that you guys get. So in the presentation today, what I wanted to talk about is I wanted to talk about three things. I wanted to first analyze what is the insight that aggregated vacancy data can provide. With that, I wanted to start deconstructing corporates using vacancy data so we can hone down and say, look at individual companies, individual case studies, and identify at an individual strategy level, what are they doing? So because I'm part of that, what you can then do is you can think about in terms of your key account management programs, both in terms of client management, but also in terms of pitching and business development, how you can then fine tune your approach into your clients to be more effective. So you go in with an insight-led approach as opposed to a, hi, have you got any jobs going on? So let's talk about what insight aggregated vacancy data can provide. Well, if you think about what information a vacancy posting will show, first of all, obviously, there'll be the company. Now, factor that when a company posts a job, you've got to think about the relationships it have. It might be a subsidiary, it might be part of a multinational, it might actually be posted as a brand name. So for example, Procter & Gamble will have multiple brand names where a job posting might be done in the name of the brand, not the company. And so to a certain extent, what happens is we end up with this kind of illusion that there are a lot more companies posting jobs than there are, because actually when you compress it, the amount of companies which are actually making hiring decisions are quite few. So when we start analysing that further, we can then start aggregating in terms of the industry companies sit within, the sector, and also the headcount of companies. So we can actually say, well, for example, if we're trying to actually build a small desk unit, which sectors are actually seeing the fastest rate of job growth in terms of headcount? By role, we can identify the professional area, obviously in terms of the qualifications that are involved, as well as all the different role types and which roles are forming hotspots, along with the seniorities from junior level through to senior level. So for example, if you're seeing across the board that the move is towards having a high level of seniority hires, that typically indicates a requirement by businesses to improve their strategic position. Whereas if the businesses are seeing more junior level volumes increase, that typically indicates a shortfall in operational capacity. And obviously also we have location issues to think through, as well as whether it's contract, permanent, fixed term. So for example, what was interesting last year is that Mark Carney gave a speech whereby he pointed out that after the referendum result, we saw an all-time peak since 2008 in short-term contract job postings. So the point being that the higher the level of day rate and fixed term contracts, the higher the level of volatility, because companies are less likely to want to actually invest into long-term employment and overhead. They just want to fill jobs, fill tasks with people now. So these are the kinds of different ways that we can, these are the kinds of different insights we can offer. Using the data, the trends. So what I want to do with this now is I want to profile one specific case study and work it through. And with that, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to open, to feedback, questions, and for individual case studies for the sectors that everyone here works in. I haven't been able to do every single sector, every single industry case study, so I thought it'd be more interesting to look at one particular area, which is a bit of a hot topic in the news, which is everything to do with banking, financial services, Brexit, technology automation, fintech. If you read the newspapers, these are the kind of buzzwords that are actually going on. So I thought I'd start by saying, okay, so let's just say at a top level, before we start looking at individual companies, we have to understand the tide mark principle. So when the tide rises, then companies individually will hire more. When the tide falls, companies will hire less. And that's basic macroeconomics. So if we want to understand where our clients are at, let's understand what the market's doing overall. So with that in mind, we start with saying, okay, well, within banking, within IT into banking, what we see is that actually last year as compared to this year, the volume of jobs in banking is up, whereby IT specifically, we see a spike. And we see a spike in activity within banking. So that straight away begs questions. Does that mean that IT across the board is going up? So, for example, the next thing we did is we looked at within London. You see that actually, no, across the board, IT into London generally, in terms of compared to all the professional vacancies, is actually relatively stable. So actually, specifically within London itself, this year, what has happened is IT has had a spike. So the other question to then look at is, okay, well, comparing IT to the UK overall, are you seeing a spike as well? No. So overall, we're saying, right, here is a specific hotspot that's emerged. So the next then question is, well, if there's a hotspot happening with banking, within IT and banking, which companies specifically are we seeing the spike happening with? So which companies might then suddenly be at a strategic level tasked with hiring a lot more aggressively than they were, and might then need recruiters to help them where they're more open to unsolicited responses than they were, or equally, might be willing to pay more than they were otherwise if they're already your suppliers, because you can point out to them that their activity, the macro activity, is above the curve. So, so that's what we're going to be doing with this next set of slides, is we're going to be looking at within this segment, which are the fastest growing companies in terms of the vacancy volume, and within their functions, how are their priorities aligned? What areas are they prioritizing? And which ones would you say are operating outside expectation? Which ones we go, oh, that's a bit strange. Oops, the next one. So what I've done here with this next slide is we've taken the top 25 banks in London and we have identified their year-on-year vacancy totals. And we've, from there, identified the year-on-year change. So most of these names people will be familiar with, RBS, HSBC, UBS, Barclays, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, etc., JP Morgan. But what's really interesting is the number one. The number one, now before I did some research before this presentation just to kind of, and the number one astounded me. I'd never heard of Fisher Investments, I'll be honest. Now I appreciate I'm not a banking recruiter, but it's quite rare that I'm doing some drilled down analysis and I come across a company that I've never heard of. Who are Fisher Investments? Because they're 250% up year on year in terms of their activity. That's a staggering amount. So what we've done next is, the next thing you can do is you say, well, okay, I'm going to do some analysis on Fisher Investments. So as you may or may not know, with Companies House, what you're able to do is for any company worth £10 million or more, you can go in and see their accounts. You can go in and see how much money they're making. You can go and see how profitable they are. Every single company which bills over £10 million turnover is required every year to file fully audited accounts. So with that, I said, okay, this is calendar year 2016, calendar year 2015, and we can see, right, okay, their turnover's up 30%, their gross profit's up 78%, their net profit's up 48%. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that last year, well, in 2015 to 2016, they had a very good year. They had a very good year. And so now they're obviously looking to capitalize, and so they're hiring aggressively. And they're looking to grow further. So, where are they looking to grow? So not in IT, which is, but still, what we see with these guys is that it's actually the banking specific roles seem to be where the big surge is. There's obviously some hiring on increase in sales, marketing, which feeds into the narrative around how they're investing into growth, but they're obviously also investing into capacity. They're looking at, we're going to scale up, we're going to need more people to deliver our basic services. And so I think that one is, 4.5 times increase on their banking operations to deliver to their tasks. And so we can take it down one step further because, as I mentioned before, what we'll do is we'll categorize every single job we publish by the function that it then sits in. So we can see straight away that, for example, banking operations, that's nearly 3 times up year on year. They started to introduce commercial banking functions. That might be a new division for them. So, for example, if you last spoke to them, if you're in the banking recruitment world, you last spoke to them a year ago, it might be then worth saying to them, ooh, are you starting to offer commercial banking services? Because that might be an area that you didn't think they did. And that's the other point about what vacancy data can highlight. It can highlight areas where a company at a strategic level has decided they're going to branch into a new area that they hadn't previously done. And that only emerges in the hiring first. And then once they've hired the people, then they start to let people know. So what vacancy data then can tell you is it can tell you where are your clients planning on growing into next, where they're not currently operating now. And from a pure innovation perspective, being able to go in and start talking to them about their future need, their future deliverables, and how you can help them make those happen now is a great way to start conversations. So once again, we can see some of the other areas. Their general marketing function, they're looking to increase by over 3 times. So anybody that's interested in marketing roles into financial services, that would be an obvious way to go. Also, HR recruitment, you see, they've got 7 that that was obviously quite a big thing for them last year as well, but they went into that as well. So the other one, which I thought I'd highlight with this, is Goldman Sachs, which is obviously a name we all know, because if we go back a few slides, what we saw was that the second company in the table after Fisher Investments was Goldman Sachs. And what I know this is much more narrow because obviously they're going to be serviced by PSLs, they're going to be serviced by a multitude of different providers already, and it's quite difficult to go in. But the best way to then open those conversations is to understand where their biggest area of demand is, because that just might be the one place where their existing suppliers aren't helping them because they're not scaled up to meet that capacity. That is a genuine hotspot where they're like going, we need these people, we need these people, we need these people. We can't get enough of them, and our existing suppliers can't help us. So straight away, go to the next slide. And once again, because we break down the role functions by division, we can see that it's IT development and engineering, which is seeing the massive surge in requirement year on year. And from there, go one slide further. We go and we see that actually it's Java developers, which seems to be what they're really, really needing. So in the same way as that we've just taken two companies, Fisher Investments, Goldman Sachs, you can actually apply this exact same methodology to any company. Now, the secret is that, especially in the knowledge economy, every single company has its own industrial process, which becomes aggregated. So just to give you guys some other examples, say in pharmaceuticals, what happens is you start with research and development. Then from research and development, you go to clinical trials. Clinical trials, well, you got medical for when things go wrong. You got quality assurance, then you got regulatory to take the product to market, and then you got sales and marketing. So straight away, you can start analyzing industry average and say, well, what is the industry average for R&D, and which companies are massively over the average, so that way, if you want to go and talk to that company, you know exactly what their area of demand is. For another example, if you're looking at, say, the oil and gas industry, well, it starts with, geologists. We're going to go and try and work out various fields. Where could be a rich seam? So straight away, they're going out and they're going, right, well, if you'll suddenly start seeing Shell or ExxonMobil start heavily hiring for geologists off the coast of Angola, then you know that their plan is to go for a seam there. And in the same, and the examples go on. In the retail industry, if you start seeing that, Tesco are looking to start hiring aggressively for people working in store in certain locations, that might mean that their lease is up and they're actually looking to start planning for a bigger site there because they're at capacity. They think there may be more demand there. And there are all sorts of insights that we can work through at that level. So taking it back to first principles, how can we then incorporate this into our key account management? I think the most important question is to look at it and say, well, within your sector, what proportion of the companies that exist are split between large, medium, and small? Because in certain sectors, every sector is going to be slightly different. Certain industries are more top-heavy than others, and that's fair. But to what extent is your business then aligned to that? So, for example, if you have, really most of your billings coming from small companies, is there an opportunity to then branch into, effectively looking to pitch to whales? And if you're looking at how your business is changing, are you now starting to win more big accounts? Are you losing key accounts? And what is your approach with key accounts? With your consultants, how are they specializing? Are your consultants client-centric, or are your consultants role-centric? Now, it sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes making your consultants client-centric as a business is counterproductive, because if the consultant then leaves, you might then end up in a situation whereby nobody else has the strength of relationship with that client. So you have, so there's a double-edged sword there. I mean, I know it sounds a basic question, but is there a client target list? And if there is, how are you determining it? So, for example, companies which are less profitable typically will look to pay less on fees and will have worse payment terms. So all small businesses thrive on cash flow. So you can start looking at it and saying, well, actually, we want to actually prioritize in terms of our key account management kind of strategy, profitable companies, because that's actually going to be better for our cash flow overall. Then you can look at things like pitching. Now, walking into a saying, hey, yes, we can fill your jobs, that's great, but how is that going to differentiate from other people? What insight can you offer in a pitch which is going to make that person go, well, this person can help us. This person understands our needs. This person can actually get us what we need. And then you can start evaluating different techniques that you use and your success rate against it. So Ultimately, what I think all this can do for you is help you determine which clients you should be prioritizing. And also, there's a famous thing, which is that people don't often think about it, but also think about whether or not it's worth disengaging with clients. You know, if you work through the cost of client, sometimes a client isn't worth having. And that sounds very counterintuitive, but it's also true. If you look at what a client costs to maintain and costs to manage, there's also an opportunity cost. So think about whether it might be worth shifting your clients to ones which are prepared to pay more fees and actually see the value. With that, understand which role types are surging, you know, which ones are really being demanded. So you can actually, for example, look at your advertising patterns. So typically, if you look at the way that most small businesses operate, they go, right, okay, we've got this many slots on this job board, this many slots on this job board, and we'll buy these LinkedIn accounts, and we'll just go after whoever comes in. But what about saying, well, no, we're going to prioritize all of our as much resource as possible on candidate generation onto the areas of the market which are surging in demand, because those typically will be the areas whereby the companies are less likely to want to haggle with us on rates and are more likely to going to really need those people being hired urgently. And ultimately, I think this data can provide a spotlight on client activity for you. To help you overall. So look, I mean, I gave you one very, very quick case study overview, which is for banking, financial services, and IT within it. But what I wanted to do now is just get questions from you guys and maybe look at, for your particular cases, how this kind of data could help you, and also what you can do internally with the data you already have to help you with your own internal planning.
Yeah, so we'll just wait to see if we have any questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can go through. Do you have any more slides or any more information, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, what we can do is, I mean, for example, we obviously publish a lot of free reports, which are available for anybody. We publish a report series with Oliver James Associates, and that looks at trends happening in financial services. We publish one in the pharmaceutical sector with clinical professionals. We publish, obviously, with you guys at APSCo. And with these, we also then spotlight individual companies. What are they focusing on? What are their key areas of activity? So you can pick up things from there as well. But you know, for us, I think it's sorry.
Yeah, we do have a question. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Lauren. She's asking us, how can we use public data to develop current accountants and build stronger relations? And build stronger relations.
I think the first thing I would suggest doing is, let's just say, I would start by just using Companies House data. So let's just say you've got your top 20 clients that you made billings from last year. I would want to know for every single one of them. I would go into Companies House, I would look at their last 3 years of accounts, and I would understand within that business what's been the changes in their revenue, what's been the changes in their profitability. Every single one of these will also have typically a CEO statement, whereby the chief executive is outlining what the business strategy is, and I would be reading that. To understand what is the business growth plan, what is the business challenges that they're facing. So, for example, what you'll see is that if a business is reporting bad accounts, the chief executive is typically talking about, ooh, challenging conditions, this is our plan for resolving it. And I would straight away then be thinking to myself, now that I understand the trajectory of the business from their publicly audited accounts, now I can start to think about what their needs might be right now.
Yeah. Okay.
That's one. The other thing which I think that you can do, which is also quite easy. Other questions coming in. The other thing which you can do, which is also quite easy, is, this is a little bit sneaky, but you can also, obviously, from LinkedIn and from some other tools, I can't remember the name of it, but this which are also you can actually start analyzing employee churn. And so the point being that if a company is basically profitable and growing, that's great. But also what might be happening is you have companies whereby they're not profitable and the people they're hiring are just to replace people leaving. And at that point, as a recruiter, if you're looking to provide value add, you could well be looking at doing JVs with HR consulting firms and actually getting referral work from HR consulting firms, where you say, look, obviously we're filling all these jobs for you, we're getting all these instructions, we don't want to intrude, we can see that obviously at an employee engagement issue, there might be an employee engagement issue here, because obviously we have to sell your job to the candidates that come in the door. And it's going to be easier for us to attract a higher level of a candidate for you, because obviously candidates have to buy into this as well. And it also might even save you on salary, because people are more likely to want to, you don't have to pay the salary premium on churn the whole time. So if, for example, you have, on average at the moment, it's estimated that the salary premium to replace ends up being between 5 and 10% each time. So, you don't actually have that bump. It may well be worth bringing people to actually specialize in employee engagement, then cut a deal with a specialist in that area, and then get a share of their fee. Now, you can find out from public data which companies are actually suffering employee churn. The first one you look at is LinkedIn. There are others as well.
Okay, thanks, James. I see we have a couple of hands raised. Do you mind, if you have any questions, do you mind using your chat box and leave those in there, and then James can pick those up?
Yeah.
So we have another one from Shay, I think.
Yeah.
Do you offer research into a particular technology like Microsoft or SAP?
Yeah, we can dive down into that. That's not a problem. I mean, from our perspective, we effectively can do text keyword search against any technology, and also any combination of technologies. So we do specifically, for example, we're doing analysis for people on SAP, and we're looking at how the new SAP technologies are emerging. Backstory for other people, SAP rolling out a new version of their technology, whereby take-up at the moment is very low, and it's much lower than SAP forecast, and we're doing some analysis to see which companies are being the fastest to take it up.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Another one from Josie. How did you generate the data shown in the slides pertaining to industry 7 companies' growth year-on-year? All through Vacancysoft. She said she missed a couple of minutes before.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, hi, Josie. So what we do on our end is we're monitoring the company's career centers directly. We classify jobs as they're published. We deduplicate. So what that means is that if a company reposts the same job, we don't count it in our data. And then we categorize the jobs by the various job types that they sit within. Let's see if there's any.
Yeah, and another one. How do we analyze companies below 10 million?
Well, that's a bit harder. I mean, if you go into a company below 10 million, some companies below 10 million, because they're on a fast growth trajectory, maybe also they're backed by venture capital, what they'll do is they'll still file a small company unaudited audited accounts, because they want to for various reasons. In the main, though, most companies choose not to, but what you can do is you can do balance sheet analysis, and you can look at year-on-year changes to balance sheet. And what that means, so for example, if a company goes from having a net balance sheet of, say, it's got a net balance sheet of £200,000, and you do 3 years worth of data, and suddenly it's got £400,000, so it's doubled its net balance sheet, then you've got a pretty fair idea of what's going on there, that overall they're basically growing and they're profitable. If on the other hand their net balance sheet is going negative, then they're basically they're overtrading. That's much more an imprecise science. I would be much more wary about solely relying on that one.
Okay. And Lauren, how do you analyze data from companies above 4 billion?
4 billion. How do you analyze? Okay, sorry. Hi, Lauren. I'm not sure what you meant by 4 billion. So how do you analyze data? So in terms of the data we capture, let's just say for companies which are global multinationals, what we're doing in this instance is we are analysing them in terms of their UK legal entities for this particular example. Now we then create within our company database framework, we create effectively a parent, which is effectively like a brand name, so Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or whatever, and then we create subsidiaries which are then for every single legal country they sit within. My research team in Warsaw really don't enjoys this part of the company research, but what it effectively does is it means that we're able to group together global corporations, both in terms of the individual countries they sit within and in terms of their entire web of subsidiaries, so that when we do corporate analysis, we can do it this way. The Japanese companies are famous for doing this in that, for example, they will run for every single different entity, they will run a completely different website and a completely different career center and a completely different legal entity. And you'll literally end up with like 100 different companies, 100 different URLs, 100 different career centers, and it might all just sit under one overall parent. So it's just basically, it's a lot of company research effectively. And that's a big part of what our Warsaw office does, is just mapping out companies.
Okay, thank you, James. There's one more. One from Emma. She said she missed a couple of minutes as well. Do they hold capture data in all sectors and geographical areas, i.e. construction sector in Scotland or
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we capture and our company research is mapped out for the UK, and that's across all industries, all sectors, all regions. We primarily cover medium to, I mean, our best coverage is medium to large, because as I said, the small companies, it just goes on like a piece of string. So it doesn't really stop. And also, to be fair, what you also have happen is that in the what we call professional jobs are much more likely to be posted online than what we call labourer jobs. So, for example, agriculture, you don't really get it in the same way. Also, day rate jobs as well don't tend to operate in the same way either. So I would say the place where our data is best is in professional jobs, professional, permanent and fixed term.
Okay. So, James, as you mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, you do loads of reports for APSCo as well.
Yeah.
Do you mind telling our members just a couple of few information about the reports you do for us?
Yeah, I mean, what we've been doing with that,
which are free for members. But
yeah, that's right.
Subscribe to receive them.
Yeah, that's right. So what we do is we do sector briefings, and these are one-page briefings on individual sectors which tie into the APSCo events. So, for example, there's one for life sciences, there's one for finance, there's one for HR, all the different groups, they have them. And in those, we're just spotlighting what we're seeing emerging as key trends. We also do a regional roundup. So what that means is that once a month, we'll take a specific region within the UK and we will highlight what the key trends are that are emerging. Those tend to be a bit more deep dives. So those are about 1,000, 1,500 words long. And they'll be analysing everything from hotspots by role, by company even. We'll start saying, well, these are the fastest growing companies in this region right now. These are the most active, and we'll analyse it also by sector within the region as well. So I think the next one which is being published is the one for the South. I think we're just waiting on the publication date for that one. And that's going to be looking at, across the south of England, what are the key changes that have been emerging.
Yep. Are there, another question from Josie, are there any white papers on the sector briefings that we can have access to? I think she's referring to the sector reports we do. So as I mentioned, all of these sector and regional reports are free for APSCo members.
That's right, yeah.
So once I send the follow-up email, I'll also send everyone a list of the reports, so you can download the region ones or the sector ones that you're interested in. Of course, no problem. No problem.
But yeah, and also, like I said as well, we also do deep dive by industry in financial services, life sciences, where we have a deep dive one on technology, which is going live as well now with S3. So I think the first one of that one's going live next week. If there are any other questions as well, do feel free just to email me. And if we've got anything which is quick and easy, then I'm happy just to send it over free of charge. That's not a problem. If it's something a bit more lengthy, then we'll just have a talk about it. But for our clients as well, if you are already a Vacancysoft client as well, and you want to get some data against this, then that's also free of charge for our clients.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much, James, for your time today, and thank you for sharing all of this fantastic information with us. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. I do hope you found the session useful. As I've mentioned, we've recorded the webinar, and we're going to send everyone who registered a copy of the recording along with the slides. We'll also provide you with James's email address in case you want to contact them directly for more information. And I'll also send you a download list of the sector and regional reports that we've mentioned throughout the webinar. Okay, thank you, and have a great day from all of us at APSCo. Bye for now.
Thank you.